All right. Welcome to another deep dive with us.
Yeah.
Today we're
Taking a deep dive.
we're going to go deep
Into the deep end.
into the deep end on
The deep thought of
into the deep thought of Friedrich Nietzsche.
Nietzsche.
So for all of our listeners out there who are philosophically inclined,
Yeah.
this one's for you.
This one's going to be a real deep dive.
A real deep.
We're going to be using a very interesting source material.
It is unique.
It's an interview.
It's an interview.
A fictional interview with Nietzsche.
Friedrich Nietzsche. Yeah. So obviously not a real interview.
Yeah.
But it's going to allow us to look at some of his ideas through a very contemporary lens.
Yes, and I think that's what's going to be really interesting for our listeners today is, you know, we all know and love Nietzsche. We've read him.
Sure.
But to look at him through this lens of, you know, how he would answer questions about today's world, today's technology, today's politics.
Yeah.
I think will be fascinating.
Yeah. So obviously we're not going to treat this interview like it's, you know, the gospel truth or anything like that.
Of course not.
We're going to be, extracting some of the philosophical ideas.
Right.
And then,
Analyzing those.
and, you know, trying to figure out what we can learn from them today.
Exactly.
In the 21st century. So,
yeah, this is a thought experiment.
it's a thought experiment for sure.
For all of us.
So, why don't we jump right in? I guess, one of the first things that the interview tackles is this concept of the will to power.
Okay.
And I found this to be really interesting because, you know, I think a lot of times when people hear Nietzsche, they think of the will to power. They think very sort of, basic and
superficial
domination. Yeah, just like a very crude, like just want to dominate other people, want to have power over other people.
Mm.
And I think what the interview does a really good job of is showing that it's a lot deeper than that.
It is.
It's more fundamental. It's more
much more nuanced.
nuanced. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about necessarily just like dominating other people. It's really this urge, this fundamental urge to grow, to expand your influence, to shape the world around you.
Yeah. And that can manifest itself in so many different ways.
Yes.
And I think what's interesting is that it's presented as something that is,
Not always conscious.
not always conscious, right? It's like this underlying drive.
It's a force.
It's a force
That's moving us.
that's moving us.
Even if we're not aware of it.
Right. So like, for example, the interview talks about tariffs
Right.
and how from a Nietzschean perspective, tariffs aren't just about like, you know, economic strategy. There's also this element of the will to power at play there.
There is.
It's about a nation asserting its vision of reality on the world.
Yes. And trying to bring the world into alignment with that vision.
Right. And it's fascinating to think about that because it's like, yeah, on one level you have the sort of like practical economic considerations,
Yeah.
but then on another level you have this like deeper philosophical drive.
Almost like a metaphysical drive.
Yeah. So the interview talks about it as like this Nietzschean tuning fork almost.
Oh, I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
That like a nation is trying to like
Use its power.
to kind of like tune the world to its frequency.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a very, very interesting way to put it.
Very interesting.
And then the interview goes on to say that, you know, really politics is all about narrative control.
Okay.
It's about who gets to define reality
Yes.
and who has to live within that definition.
It is the power to frame events.
Yeah.
To decide how they're going to be interpreted.
Right.
And to create the context for how other people are going to be interacting with the world.
Yeah. And so like, you know, you think about any major news story, you know, and how quickly like competing narratives emerge.
Immediately.
Right.
Like within minutes.
And it's like a battle for, you know.
Yes, battle for truth.
For truth.
Which is so interesting because it brings up the question of, is there even such a thing as objective truth?
Right.
In the political sphere?
Or is it all just about like who has the most power to enforce their version of reality?
Right. Who can shout the loudest? Who can control the narrative?
All right. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about technology.
Okay.
Because the interview has some very interesting things to say about technology as well. One of the things that really stood out to me was this idea of tech companies being like the priests of a new church.
Okay. That's provocative.
It is provocative.
I like it.
But I think it's also very insightful.
I think so too.
Because you think about the amount of influence that these companies have over our lives.
Yeah, it's undeniable.
It's undeniable.
I mean, they control our attention. They control how we communicate with each other.
Yeah.
They control the information that we see.
They control what we buy.
Yeah.
You know, they're shaping our reality in a very real way.
They really are.
And so this idea of them being like priests, it's like they're not just neutral innovators.
Right.
They're figures who wield this immense power.
Immense power.
And they're shaping our beliefs in a way that's very similar to how religious institutions used to.
And what's fascinating is, a lot of people would say, well, religious institutions were about spirituality and, connecting with something greater than yourself. And technology is about, progress and innovation.
Yeah, but is it really?
But the interview makes you think, like, are they offering a new kind of spirituality?
Oh, that's interesting.
Like, are we looking to these tech companies for some kind of salvation?
Digital salvation.
Digital salvation, yeah.
And in a way, that's kind of scary.
It is a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if we're looking to these companies for meaning,
right,
and for purpose,
right,
then we're giving them an incredible amount of power over us.
And they're not necessarily accountable to us.
Right.
In the same way that, like, maybe a religious institution would be accountable to its congregation.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, that's a very thought-provoking idea.
It is.
And then the interview goes on to talk about how the users of these platforms are like scrolling pilgrims.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a great analogy.
In the temples of these digital platforms.
The temples, yeah.
It's like we're constantly
constantly
making these pilgrimages to these platforms.
Yeah, and it's almost like an unconscious devotion in a way.
Yeah, it's like we don't even think about it.
We just do it.
We just open up our phones and we start scrolling.
We're looking for something.
We're looking for something.
We're not always sure what it is.
Yeah.
But we're looking for something.
I think we're looking for connection.
Yeah.
We're looking for validation.
Right.
We're looking for a sense of belonging.
And the companies know that.
They do.
And they're designing these platforms to exploit that.
Yeah. Yeah, they're designing them to keep us engaged.
Right.
To keep us coming back.
To keep us hooked.
Yeah, to keep us hooked.
And so the interview talks about this transition from seeking religious salvation to seeking this kind of on-demand digital salvation.
I see that.
Right. It's like before, people would go to church or they would pray or they would meditate.
Right.
And they would be seeking, some kind of spiritual fulfillment.
Yeah, connection to something greater than themselves.
Now it's like we're seeking that same fulfillment.
But we're looking for it in likes and shares and retweets.
And swipes and purchases and
it's instant.
Yeah, it's instant gratification.
Right there at our fingertips.
But it's also very fleeting.
Very fleeting.
It's a sugar rush.
It is. You get that little dopamine hit, and then you need another one.
You need another one, right?
And another one.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting parallel to draw, I think.
Very interesting.
And then the interview goes on to talk about how this promise of personalization, this curated digital experience that we all get, it's like, oh, you get this personalized feed, you get these recommendations that are tailored just for you.
It all sounds very nice.
It does.
But the cost of that is constant surveillance.
Yes.
Our data becomes the commodity.
It's the currency of the digital age.
Yeah. We're not just using a service.
Right.
Our interactions, our preferences, our very attention is being bought and sold.
It's being mined.
It's being mined.
And refined and sold to the highest bidder.
And so it's like we're the product.
Yeah, we are the product.
And the advertisers are the customers.
And the platforms are the middlemen.
Middlemen, yeah.
Who are profiting off of our data.
Off of our attention.
Off of our lives, essentially.
And so it's like this whole system is designed to extract as much data from us as possible.
Yes.
And then to use that data to manipulate us.
Into buying things.
Into buying things.
Into voting for certain candidates.
Into believing certain things.
Into thinking a certain way.
Yeah, it's very Orwellian in a way.
It is.
And then there's this really interesting question that the interview raises, which is like...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's like...
It's deep.
It's a deep question.
I like it.
It's like, is it in the cloud?
Is it in our backups?
Is it in our backups?
Is it in these conversations that we're having?
Right. And it's interesting because it's like so much of our lives is now mediated through technology.
It is.
And so much of our experience is stored in digital formats.
I mean, think about it. We have our photos in the cloud.
Yeah.
We have our conversations stored in text messages.
Our journals.
Our journals are online.
Our thoughts are on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's like so much of who we are is out there in the digital ether.
And it makes you wonder, like, what does that mean for our sense of self?
Right.
What does it mean for our identity?
And it's a question that I don't think anybody really has the answer to yet.
It's a question that philosophers are going to be grappling with.
For a long time to come.
For a long time to come.
All right, let's move on and talk a little bit about truth and illusion and self-delusion, because this is another area where the interview, I think, has some really insightful things to say. One of the things that it talks about is how laughter has become a kind of defense mechanism against some of the more challenging realities of the modern world.
Okay.
So it's like, we're facing all these like really intense things like burnout,
climate change,
the feeling of constant surveillance,
late stage capitalism.
Right. All of these things that are kind of like weighing on us.
Yeah.
And it's like laughter is a way to cope. Yeah. To process, to create some distance from those things.
To make it bearable.
To make it bearable.
Otherwise, it's just too much.
It's too much.
Yeah.
And so the interview talks about this phrase, we meme what we fear.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
And it's so true.
It is so true.
I mean, think about all the memes that are out there about, anxiety and depression and climate change and the apocalypse. It's like, we're taking all of these things that we're afraid of and we're turning them into jokes.
Right.
Because it's a way to deal with them.
Yeah.
It's a way to make them less scary.
Less scary. And the interview even goes so far as to call humor like anesthesia for collective despair.
Wow.
Which is a very, very powerful image.
It is.
It's like we're numbing ourselves to the pain of the world. With laughter.
Yeah.
But the problem is that, eventually the anesthesia wears off.
And then you're left with
the pain.
The raw pain.
And so it's like, yeah, laughter can be a coping mechanism, but it can't be the only coping mechanism.
Right. We have to find other ways to deal with these issues.
Right. We have to actually confront them.
We have to engage with them.
Yeah. And then the interview talks about self-delusion and how it's not like this weird anomaly. Mm-hmm. It's actually a fundamental human tendency.
Like it's built into us.
It's part of our nature.
And technology is making it worse.
Yeah, because technology allows us to curate our own reality.
Right. To create these echo chambers where we only see information that confirms our existing beliefs.
Right.
And so we can just like live in this bubble of self-delusion.
Yeah, and never have to confront anything that challenges our worldview.
Right.
And the interview actually quotes Nietzsche here.
Okay.
It says, sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed.
Oh, that's so true.
And it's like, yeah, that's human nature.
It is. It's much easier to just believe what's comfortable.
Right.
Even if it's not true.
Even if it's a lie.
Yeah.
And the interview actually frames these illusions as like survival strategies in a way.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's like they provide comfort. They give us a sense of control.
In a world that can feel very chaotic,
right,
very out of control.
And so it's like, yeah, they're not necessarily good, but
they serve a purpose.
They serve a purpose.
Yeah.
But the problem is that, if we cling to these illusions too tightly,
right,
then we never really grow.
We never learn.
We never learn.
We never evolve.
And we never really become who we're supposed to be.
And that's a tragedy.
It is a tragedy.
Because we all have so much potential.
Right.
But we have to be willing to let go of the illusions.
To confront the truth.
To face reality.
Even when it's painful.
Even when it's painful.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another really interesting point that the interview makes, which is this idea that valor that struggles is better than weakness that endures.
I like that.
Yeah. And this is actually a quote from Hegel.
Oh, okay.
But the interview portrays Nietzsche as being in agreement with this idea.
Interesting.
So even though Nietzsche is very critical of traditional morality,
right,
he still sees the value in active engagement with the world.
Right.
He sees the value in struggle.
In pushing against the boundaries.
In
testing your limits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, even when the world feels overwhelming or absurd,
right,
it's still better to fight, to struggle. Than to just give up and endure.
To passively accept things as they are.
Right, because endurance without purpose is just stagnation.
It's decay.
Yeah.
It's death.
And so it's like, even if you fail, even if you lose the fight,
there's still honor in the struggle.
There's still meaning in the struggle.
Yes.
And so I think this is a really important message for all of us.
Especially today.
When
the world can feel so overwhelming.
Right.
And it's easy to just feel like giving up.
Right.
But we can't give up.
We have to keep fighting.
We have to keep struggling.
We have to keep striving.
Yeah.
And then the interview quotes Nietzsche again, and it says, the strength of a person's spirit would then be measured by how much truth he could tolerate, or more precisely, to what extent he needs to have it diluted, disguised, sweetened, muted, falsified.
Okay.
So what do you think that means?
I think it means that true strength of spirit is the ability to face reality as it is.
Without any sugarcoating, without any illusions.
Without any filters.
Without any filters, yeah.
And that's a very rare quality.
It is.
Because most people can't handle that.
Right. Most people need to have the truth diluted in some way.
Yeah, they need to have it packaged in a way that's palatable.
That's easy to swallow.
Easy to swallow.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just too much for them to handle.
Right. It's too overwhelming.
And so it's like the people who can actually face the truth, those are the people who are truly strong.
The strong-willed.
The strong-willed, yeah.
The ones who can withstand the apocalypse.
Yeah, and it's like the truth can be like a personal apocalypse in a way.
It can be.
Because it can challenge everything you thought you knew about yourself.
Yeah. You can shatter your ego.
Shatter your ego.
You can dismantle your entire worldview.
Yeah, and so it's like, yeah, it takes a lot of courage.
A lot of strength.
A lot of strength.
A lot of fortitude.
To face that.
To face the truth.
To face the truth.
Head on. Head on.
Yeah. So what do you think Nietzsche would say about the world today?
Well, I think he would have a lot to say.
I think so too.
I think he would be both fascinated and horrified.
Yeah.
By the world that we've created.
I think the interview does a really good job of showing that.
It does.
It's like it paints this picture of a world that is overdosing on information.
Right.
But starving for meaning.
Yeah, we have access to more information than ever before.
Right.
But we seem to be more lost than ever.
More lost than ever.
More confused, more anxious.
And it's like we're so connected digitally.
Right.
But we're also so isolated.
Yeah, it's like we're all in our own little bubbles.
In our own little echo chambers.
Yeah.
And the interview talks about how we've replaced gods with brands.
Oh, yeah?
And how we've transformed the sacred into slogans.
Hashtags.
And the hashtags. And it's like, we're still seeking meaning.
Right.
But we're seeking it in all the wrong places.
In these empty, superficial things.
In these empty, superficial things, yeah. And it's like, we're so obsessed with metrics.
With likes and shares and followers.
Yeah. It's like we're trying to quantify our worth.
Yeah, and our value is based on how many people are paying attention to us online.
Right.
Which is so absurd when you think about it.
It is absurd.
But it's the reality that we're living in.
It is the reality.
Yeah.
And then the interview talks about this holy trinity of speed, spectacle, and short attention span.
Oh, that's good.
Right.
I like that.
And it's like, that's the defining characteristic of our age.
It is.
Everything is so fast-paced.
It's so surface level.
So surface level.
And we have the attention spans of gnats.
Of gnats, yeah. And so it's like, it's very difficult to have like a nuanced conversation.
To have a deep thought.
To have a deep thought.
To really engage with anything.
To really engage with anything.
Yeah.
And then there's this idea that morality is being outsourced to algorithms.
Okay.
Which is a very scary thought. It's like we're letting these algorithms decide what's right and wrong.
Yeah, and we're just blindly following their dictates.
And we're not even thinking about it.
Right.
They're just like, oh, well, the algorithm said it, so it must be true.
Yeah, and it's dangerous because algorithms are not objective.
Right.
They're created by people.
They're created by people with biases.
With biases, with agendas.
Agendas.
And so it's like we're essentially letting these people with biases and agendas control our morality.
Yeah, and we're not even aware of it.
We're not even aware of it.
Yeah, that's the scary part.
And then the interview talks about this tension between the performance of identity online and the fear of both being forgotten and yet truly known.
Yeah. It's like, we want to be seen.
Right.
But we also want to control how we're seen.
Right.
And we're afraid of being truly known.
Because what if people don't like what they see?
Right. What if they reject us?
Yeah. And so it's like we're caught in this paradox.
Yeah, we're performing our identities.
But we're also terrified of being authentic.
Of being vulnerable. Yeah. And so it's like, it's a very difficult situation to navigate.
It is.
But the interview doesn't end on a completely pessimistic note.
No.
There's this suggestion that, amidst all of this chaos and despair, there's still potential for creation.
For awakening. For something new and beautiful to emerge.
And the interview uses this phrase, the rubble of comfort.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's like we have to break down the old structure.
The old illusions.
The old ways of thinking.
Yeah, in order to create something new.
To build something better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
There's hope.
There's hope?
There's always hope.
There's always hope.
As long as we're willing to fight for it.
To struggle.
To create.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Let's talk about God.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So, obviously...
Nietzsche's famous for killing him.
Nietzsche is famous for saying God is dead, and we have killed him.
And we have killed him, right? But I think it's important to understand what he meant by that.
Right, because a lot of people misinterpret that.
Yeah, they think he was, like, celebrating the death of God.
Like, he was happy about it.
Like, yay, God is dead.
No, he was actually lamenting it.
He was lamenting it.
He was saying that it was a tragedy.
A tragedy.
Because God represented meaning.
Right.
And purpose.
Moral order.
Yeah. And without God...
we're lost.
We're adrift.
Yeah. And so the interview talks about how... we haven't really overcome our need for God.
Right.
We've just replaced him with new idols.
With celebrities, with politicians.
With brands, with ideologies.
With algorithms.
With algorithms, yeah. It's like we're still worshiping something.
We're still looking for something to believe in.
To give us meaning, to give us purpose.
To tell us what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like the death of God has left this void. This vacuum. Yeah, and we're trying to fill it with all sorts of things.
But nothing seems to fit.
Yeah,
because the void is too big.
And so the interview ends with this really powerful quote from Nietzsche.
Okay.
It says, "The greatest burden is to exist without becoming."
Wow. That's heavy.
It is heavy.
But it's also very profound.
It's very profound.
I think it means that the worst thing we can do is to just go through life passively.
Right.
To just exist without ever really becoming who we're meant to be.
Without growing, without evolving.
Without struggling. Yeah.
And so it's like the challenge for all of us
is to become.
To
actively create ourselves.
To create our own meaning.
To find our own purpose.
Yeah. And that's not easy.
It's not.
It's a lot of work.
It's a struggle.
But
it's a worthwhile struggle.
Because
it's the only way to truly live.
Yeah. And so we leave you with this question. In a world that is saturated with information
and illusion and distraction,
what truth will you seek?
And how will you create your own meaning?
That's the deep dive for today.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.